how did you come up with the idea?
Yeah, so as we're seeing more people build sites with Airo Builder, I noticed that a lot of them look the same. And so I wanted to start understanding why that was happening. And thankfully, Airo Builder's gotten far enough along now that I can do research projects right in Airo Builder. So I started creating an app where my goal was just to have it create a bunch of different home pages, to kind of mimicking the sort of basic prompts most people use to build to understand does that match the results I had been seeing? And it did. And then so my next step was to start taking screenshots of those sites that I had built and then feed them into Claude Opus 4.5 to have it start doing some analysis on them and kind of identifying the sorts of things in the sites I'd built that seemed super generic. So it's kind of use that human process mixed with AI to help we quickly do a bunch of analysis. And then from that, I was able to start figuring out, well, what would new prompts be that would create better versions of those sites?
And like from just a prompting perspective, as you were doing research, what do you feel are like some of the, I don't want to say mistakes, but like what are some of the common things that people do in prompting that just makes them create like boring looking websites or like
Yeah, so what happens is we often leave all the details up to the AI. So we say, like, create an about me page. And you might have already told it, and maybe you give it some details about you, your favorite quote, where your company was created or whatever. But you don't talk about a lot about what the design you want normally is. And when you do that, it fills in all the details, but without any direction, just creates a very generic looking about page because there was nothing for it to build off of. So LLM is kind of always completing the sentence that you give it. So you want an about page, you get very little input, and so you're seeing almost nothing but AI output at that point. Where if you start adding more direction, like that could be the colors you want to see, or I want to see this style of images, or maybe you really like those bento grids that Apple always uses on its website. So if you mention something
Mhm,
like that, then it'll start bringing those elements in. And that's I don't know if it's necessarily a mistake, but if you really care about the visual output, you need to give it some
mhm.
direction, or you do tend to get something that looks pretty generic.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like there's some, I don't know if it's like a new thing, but there's like AI built websites fatigue, design fatigue, whereas like you look at a website and you can kind of tell from the layout if it was built with a vibe
Yeah,
coding tool.
I tend when I'm testing to build the same site over and over. So I really get that fatigue of like, here's yet another thing that looks exactly the same. And it really
Hmm.
loves to put a random pill at the top or the bottom of that hero image with some words in it.
One of the like examples that I think that would be great.
All right, so this is one of the sites that I had it built. And it's not a bad looking site. It did some nice things with color here. It picked actually a great image and it did a lot from this very basic prompt here. I mean, it wasn't just a nothing prompt though. I gave it some direction here of
Hmm.
using vibrant colors, things like that. And so I did that, but it still did a lot of those AI trope things, the things that AI loves to do. So
Hmm.
it used this pill here. It did okay here, but it did this grid here. So this was like if you're trying to make a good looking site where you would end up. But if you really start looking into it of saying, well, if we give it an additional amount of direction, you can end up with a site that looks like this. And so it's not just trying and saying things like make it more exciting, using a couple like that helps, but it doesn't go the whole way. And so like you have to give it some actual tips on the sort of you need to learn a couple of layout words that the AI responds to. So saying things like an asymmetric grid, telling to do that, and then also pointing out areas where you want to be differentiated using rotation effects, things like that. And that's how you can end up with a site like this, where you get these extra animations when you're mousing over things or these zoom ins on these images. No, knows how to do just fine, but you have to kind of direct it in this way to not get that site that, was pretty good, but really still looked like it was created from a template rather than something that was new. And if you start with like a more generic topic, like you're doing something boring, like building a legal professional services website, it tends to be even worse because you're not going to say, create this bright and exciting site. In this case, it wouldn't really fit with the company. And you really end up getting a lot of things like this, of this very basic grid of cards over and over through your sites. We can kind of apply some of those same rules of asking it to push outside the bounds a little bit more. It's still not going to be as fancy of a site as that creative site. It wouldn't make sense for buying your lawyer to have that sort of look, but we can do things to give it a premium feel where we're using multiple columns for the layout, using these less boring cards, bringing in some iconography, doing a timeline here. And, the topic is still boring, but we can get a much better site just by changing how we prompt. So far, we've rolled out an automatic prompt enhancement for your very initial prompt. Since we know right off the bat, most people are focused on understanding what their new site will look like, we take the prompt that you give us and we use an LLM to apply those same rules that I was applying there, specifying more details so that you get a more interesting looking site. So that's happening out of the box, at least for your initial prompt. And we're going to be looking at how we can identify the correct moments to do that same work when you're building
Mm.
additional pages, but that hasn't rolled out yet. Hopefully in the next couple weeks, we'll identify that.
That's great. I'm so excited to get to see all the new amazing websites that our customers will get to build with that. What is something else that is going to happen that you're very excited about?
Well, I'm hoping soon we'll make it a lot easier to add AI to your own apps. Right now, you can do it, but you really have to know a lot of details to tell Airo Builder on how to accomplish that. But soon we should have that built right in so anybody can add AI summarization to the things they're building or even a chatbot for support to their website.
Oh, that's so cool.